Now with our lead story, China criticizes America over human rights violations. Also, will Attorney General Eric Holder survive in office? Joining us now from Washington, Fox News chief political analyst, Britt Hume. So is Rod Serling now an Assistant Secretary of State for the United States of America, the Twilight Zone producer? I have to tell you, I have never been so surprised in my entire life about a story like this. What do you think?
Well, I'm not altogether surprised that a diplomat like that might say something along those lines privately, behind closed doors, in a diplomatic session with leading Chinese officials. But for him to come out and blurt that out the way he did so proudly before the cameras is really hard to understand. Now, there is, Bill, a kind of a school of thought among some Chinese experts and scholars that holds basically that a soft approach in dealing with the Chinese is more effective than a hard approach in which you call them out before the world. And, you know, these people can develop their line of thinking better than I can, and perhaps this is in some way pursuant to that. But for him to come out and announce this publicly, I just can't, for the life of me, figure out why he would do that. And it suggests that he, along with others in this administration, seem not to have read the Arizona immigration law. They seem breathtakingly ignorant of what it is.
Well, they don't even care, though. If Posner is described as a left-wing zealot, and it looks like he is, if he is that mindset, then it doesn't matter what the law says. He thinks it's going to be discriminatory against Hispanics. But it goes beyond that. It goes into the realm of the guy gets up there and he says, we discuss the Arizona law early and often. It's like we're pushing this on the Chinese. It's not like the Chinese are saying we're doing in Arizona, okay? They don't seem to care, the Chinese. This guy walks in and says, before we get to your brutalization of Tibet, your concentration camps, you're incarcerating people for 30 years if you don't like what they say. Before we get to all that, what about Arizona, huh? How horrendous. Making a moral equivalency about human rights violations. And you're sitting there going, Posner in the Bush administration or the Reagan administration would have been fired like that. Am I wrong? You covered that.
I think so. Well,
fired like that.
Of course. Well, someone like that would probably never have been appointed in either of those administrations. But let me suggest one way this conversation might have gone that isn't quite as egregious as the scenario you just described, although neither of us has any way of knowing. But you can imagine a situation. Look, he said, look, there's some issues we have with you Chinese on human rights. Now, we're not pretending to be perfect. We have our own problems, of which this controversy about the Arizona law is but one example. And I can see how you could approach it along those lines. I'm not saying that makes sense, but it makes more sense than saying, look, before we start talking about your miserable human rights record, let's talk about our little minor.
Early and often, Britt. We talk about it early and often. Early and often.
I get that. I heard him. I know. I can't. It's hard to account for. Now, I'm doing the best I can here, partner, but it's hard to account for.
Both you and I have been fair to President Obama. We both know that the outreach to the Muslim world was good intention. All right? May not have come off that way in Cairo. May have come off very weak. But there was a strategy. We need the Muslim nations to support us. We're going to come in and outreach. Okay. We reported both sides of the story. Hume and I did. Both sides. There isn't another side, Britt. There's no other side. This is just stupid. This is insulting. This is crazy. Right?
Well, it's certainly, well, for one thing, politically it's nuts. This in terms of the situation here at home, and you've got these, as you pointed out, these large majorities of Americans who think that the basic outlines of this law are a good idea.